My name is Lila Montgomery, and this is the story of how I turned whispers of doubt into roars of success. Please subscribe our channel as 90% of viewers do not subscribe. They laughed when I chose paint over paychecks. They are not laughing anymore. The morning everything changed started like any other in our suffocating small town of Millfield Creek. I was 24, broke and standing in front of my latest masterpiece, a vibrant mural covering the entire side wall of Peterson's old hardware store. My fingers were stained with cerulean blue and burnt sienna, my back aching from 3 days of nonstop painting. But as I stepped back to admire my work, the familiar sting of judgment pierced through my moment of pride. Still playing with crayons, I see. Margaret Hendricks stood behind me, her arms crossed, wearing that same disapproving scowl she had perfected over her 63 years of spreading negativity through our town. Behind her stood 3 other women from the church committee, all wearing expressions that could curdle milk. Art does not pay the bills, Lila, Margaret continued, her voice dripping with false concern. When are you going to get a real job? You cannot live off your parents forever. My jaw tightened. I had not lived with my parents for 2 years, surviving on ramen noodles and the occasional $20 I earned from small painting commissions. But explaining this to Margaret would be like trying to teach calculus to a brick wall. Why do you not get a real job at the bank like normal people? Chimed in Sandra Walsh, the town's self-appointed career counselor. Or maybe retail. Something stable. Something productive. The word productive hit me like a slap across the face. Here I stood in front of a mural that had taken me 72 hours to complete. A piece that would bring joy to thousands of people walking past this corner for years to come. And they called it unproductive. You will never make it past doodles on walls, added Patricia Moore, examining her perfectly manicured nails with theatrical boredom. This little hobby of yours is cute, but it is time to grow up. The fire in my chest began to burn hotter with each word. These women knew nothing about the sacrifice, the dedication, the sheer determination it took to create something beautiful from nothing. They saw only what they wanted to see, a young woman wasting her life on foolish dreams. But what they could not see were the late nights I spent hunched over my easel, my fingers cramping as I perfected every brushstroke. They could not see the cold mornings when I woke up at 5 a.m. to catch the perfect lighting for outdoor murals, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air as I mixed colors with frozen fingers. They could not see the fire that burned in my chest every single time I dipped my brush into color, the electric surge of possibility that coursed through my veins with every creative decision I made. Most painfully, they could not see the rejection letters stuffed in my desk drawer, the gallery owners who had dismissed my work with barely a glance, the potential clients who had hung up on me mid-pitch. But for every rejection, I painted harder. For every dismissal, I dreamed bigger. Thank you for your concern, ladies, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady despite the volcanic rage building inside me. But I will be just fine. Margaret's laugh was sharp and cruel. Oh honey, reality is going to hit you so hard. Mark my words. In 5 years you will be working behind a counter somewhere, wondering why you wasted your 20s on this nonsense. They walked away, their laughter echoing off the walls of the narrow street. But their words stayed with me, burning like acid in my veins. That night, I sat in my tiny studio apartment, staring at my paint-stained hands by the light of a single lamp. The walls were covered with my artwork, paintings that spoke of dreams too big for small minds to understand, sketches that captured emotions these people had probably never felt, color combinations that made my heart sing even when the world tried to make it weep. I made a promise to myself that night, a vow that would change everything. I would prove them wrong. Not just wrong, spectacularly, undeniably, impossibly wrong. The next morning, I woke up with renewed determination coursing through my bloodstream. One mural turned into 2 when the local coffee shop owner, Jake Martinez, saw my work on Peterson's building and commissioned me to paint something for his storefront. I love what you did over there, Jake said, pointing toward the hardware store. Can you do something that captures the essence of coffee culture? Something that makes people feel warm and welcomed? For the next week, I poured my soul into that coffee shop mural. I painted steaming cups floating through dreamlike clouds, coffee beans transforming into musical notes, and hands of different colors coming together over shared conversations. The piece was more than decoration. It was storytelling through color and form. When I finished, something magical happened. People began stopping just to look. They took photographs. They brought their friends. The coffee shop's business increased by 30% in the first month. 2 murals became 10 when word spread through social media. A local restaurant commissioned me for their interior wall. A small boutique wanted something that reflected their bohemian aesthetic. A pediatric dentist's office needed something to calm anxious children. Each project taught me something new about business, about art, about the power of visual storytelling. I learned to price my work appropriately, to draft contracts that protected my interests, to communicate with clients in a language they understood. But the real breakthrough came 6 months later when I received a call that would change everything. "Hello, is this Lila Montgomery? The artist who painted that incredible mural downtown?" The voice belonged to Rebecca Chin, the regional manager for a upscale cafe chain based in the state capital. She had been driving through Millfield Creek when my coffee shop mural caught her attention. "We have been looking for someone to create unique artwork for our new location," Rebecca continued. "Your style is exactly what we need. Would you be interested in discussing a commission? The budget is $25,000. $25,000. I nearly dropped the phone. That single commission led to 3 more cafe locations. Word traveled through Rebecca's network of business contacts. A boutique hotel in the city hired me to create a series of murals for their lobby and restaurant areas. The fee was $50,000. My inbox started filling faster than I could paint. Corporate clients, restaurants, retail spaces, private collectors. Everyone wanted something unique, something that would set them apart from their competitors. That is when I realized something that would change my life forever. I was no longer just an artist. I was running a business that was growing faster than I could handle alone. So I did something unthinkable for that jobless artist they used to mock. I started a design studio. I rented a proper workspace in the city, 40 minutes from Millfield Creek. The space was raw and industrial, with high ceilings perfect for large-scale work and enormous windows that flooded the room with natural light. I installed professional lighting, bought high-quality equipment, and created separate areas for different types of projects. But running a growing business meant I needed help. I hired my first employee, a recent art school graduate named Phoenix Rivera, who shared my passion for large-scale visual storytelling. Phoenix brought fresh ideas and boundless energy, plus skills in digital design that complemented my traditional painting techniques. Within 6 months, I hired 2 more artists. Camden Walsh, a specialist in 3D installations, and Sage Thompson, whose background in graphic design helped us expand into branding and marketing materials for our clients. I built a team of creatives who understood that art was not just decoration. It was communication, emotion, experience. We were not just painting walls. We were transforming spaces and touching lives. Our first major corporate contract came from a tech company that wanted to completely reimagine their office environment. The project was worth $200,000 and required 6 weeks of intensive work. We created an interconnected series of murals that told the story of innovation, featuring abstract representations of data flowing like rivers, ideas blooming like flowers, and human connections sparking like electrical currents. The tech company was so thrilled with the results that they featured our work in their annual report and recommended us to other companies in their network. 1 project led to 5 more. 5 projects led to 15. I secured contracts across the country. Hotels in Miami commissioned tropical paradise scenes that made guests feel like they were stepping into vacation dreams. A children's hospital in Denver hired us to create whimsical, healing artwork that transformed sterile corridors into magical wonderlands. A luxury restaurant chain paid us to develop signature murals for 12 locations nationwide. My so-called hobby was becoming a business worth millions. The success was intoxicating, but it was also exhausting. I was working 16-hour days, managing client relationships, overseeing multiple projects, handling finances, and still trying to maintain the creative vision that had started it all. I realized I needed more than artists. I needed business professionals who could handle the administrative side, while I focused on the creative direction. That is when fate delivered the most delicious irony I could have ever imagined. Applications started pouring in for our open positions. Project manager, client relations coordinator, financial analyst, marketing specialist. As I reviewed the resumes, familiar names began jumping out at me. Margaret Hendricks had applied for the client relations position. The same Margaret who had told me I would never make it past doodles on walls was now submitting a cover letter explaining why she would be perfect for representing my company to potential customers. Sandra Walsh wanted the project manager role. The woman who had suggested I get a real job at the bank was now eager to manage the timeline and budgets for the artistic projects she had once dismissed as worthless. Patricia Moore had applied to be our marketing specialist. The same Patricia who had called my work a cute hobby was now outlining strategies for promoting the business she had once mocked. But the applications that truly shocked me came from people I had known my entire life. Tom Bradley, who had been my high school classmate and had publicly ridiculed my decision to study art, applied for our financial analyst position. In high school, he had stood in front of our entire senior class during career day and said, "Lila is majoring in art," which basically means she is majoring in unemployment. Now his resume boasted about his accounting degree and his 3 years of experience at a local firm that was struggling to stay afloat. Linda Foster, who had been my mother's best friend until she started openly criticizing my unrealistic career choices at every family gathering, applied to be our administrative assistant. I remembered the Christmas dinner when she had cornered me in the kitchen and said, "Your poor mother is so embarrassed. All her friends' children have real careers, and she has to explain why her daughter is playing with paint." Now Linda's cover letter emphasized her organizational skills and her enthusiasm for working in a dynamic creative environment. The irony was so thick I could have painted with it. But here is what surprised me most about myself. I felt no desire for revenge. These people had caused me pain, yes. Their words had stung, their doubt had hurt, their dismissal had burned. But their negativity had also fueled my determination. In a twisted way, they had contributed to my success by showing me exactly what I was fighting against. More importantly, I recognized something in their applications that I understood deeply: desperation. The economic reality of small-town life was harsh. Jobs were scarce, opportunities limited, and many of these people were struggling just as much as I had been, just in different ways. I decided to hire them. Not out of revenge, but as a reminder that dreams could become reality, that passion could become profit, and that the people who dismiss you today might be the ones asking for your help tomorrow. The interviews were fascinating exercises in human psychology. Margaret Hendricks sat across from me in our conference room, her hands folded primly in her lap, explaining why she would be excellent at client relations. She spoke about her communication skills, her attention to detail, her ability to manage multiple relationships simultaneously. "I believe I have the perfect personality for representing your company to potential clients," she said, her voice steady and professional. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "Margaret, do you remember what you said to me about a year ago? When I was finishing the mural on Peterson's building?" A flush of red crept up her neck. I may have expressed some concerns about the viability of artistic careers, but I have always admired your persistence. You told me I would never make it past doodles on walls. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Finally, Margaret cleared her throat. "I was wrong. Obviously, I was very wrong. And I would be honored to help other people see what I failed to see. That you are building something truly remarkable here." I hired her. Sandra Walsh's interview followed a similar pattern. She outlined her project management experience, her organizational capabilities, her leadership potential. When I reminded her of her suggestion that I get a real job at the bank, she had the grace to look genuinely ashamed. "I spoke from a place of limited understanding," Sandra admitted. "I thought security meant settling for conventional choices. I did not realize that real security comes from building something meaningful, something that grows from your own talents and determination." I hired her too. Patricia Moore actually surprised me during her interview. When I brought up her cute hobby comment, she laughed ruefully. "I said that because I was jealous," she confessed. "I have spent my entire adult life working jobs that paid the bills but never fed my soul. Watching you pursue your passion scared me because it reminded me of all the dreams I had given up on. It was easier to dismiss your courage than to face my own cowardice." Her honesty was refreshing. I hired her as well. One by one, I assembled a team that included many of the people who had once doubted me. But I also hired others. Recent graduates who reminded me of my younger self, experienced professionals who brought valuable skills, and passionate individuals who understood that business success and creative integrity were not mutually exclusive. 3 months later, we held our first all-staff meeting in our expanded workspace. The room buzzed with nervous energy as 15 employees found their seats around the large conference table I had commissioned from a local woodworker. A table made from reclaimed barn wood and painted with subtle artistic details that reflected our company's aesthetic. I stood at the head of the table, looking at the faces of people who had journeyed from doubt to employment, from criticism to collaboration. Margaret sat to my right, a notebook ready for taking notes about client relations strategies. Sandra was reviewing project timelines on her tablet. Patricia had prepared a marketing presentation that would have impressed any Fortune 500 company. But I also saw the faces of Phoenix, Camden, and Sage, the artists who had believed in our vision from the beginning. And there were others. Marcus Chen, our new business development manager who had relocated from San Francisco specifically to join our team. Riley Johnson, a digital marketing expert who understood how to translate artistic vision into online engagement. And Dr. Amara Okafor, our operations consultant who had helped us systematize our processes for scalable growth. The contrast was striking. Believers and former doubters sitting side by side, all working toward the same goal. "Welcome, everyone," I began, my voice carrying across the room with confidence I had earned through every rejection, every late night, every moment of doubt I had overcome. 6 months ago, some of you might have questioned whether this company would still exist today. A year ago, some of you might have wondered if artistic businesses could ever be financially viable. I paused, letting my words sink in. Today, I am pleased to announce that we have secured contracts worth over $3 million for the next fiscal year. We are expanding into new markets, developing innovative service offerings, and building a reputation that extends far beyond our regional market. The room erupted in applause, but I raised my hand for quiet. This success belongs to all of us. Every person in this room contributes something essential to our mission. We are not just creating art. We are transforming spaces, touching lives, and proving that creativity and commerce can work together to build something extraordinary. I looked directly at Margaret, then Sandra, then Patricia. I want to address something that some of you might be wondering about. Yes, there are people in this room who once doubted whether artistic careers could be sustainable. There are people here who once suggested I should pursue more practical alternatives. The tension in the room was palpable. I hired these people not because I forgot their earlier words, but because I believe in second chances and personal growth. I hired them because they had skills our company needed, and because they had the courage to admit they were wrong and ask to be part of something they had once dismissed. I smiled at the group, feeling a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with revenge, and everything to do with redemption. Most importantly, I hired them because I understand what it means to be underestimated. I know how it feels to have your potential dismissed, your dreams mocked, your vision questioned, and I believe that everyone deserves the opportunity to prove themselves, to grow beyond their past limitations, to contribute to something meaningful. Margaret wiped away a tear that had formed in the corner of her eye. Sandra nodded slowly, her expression a mixture of gratitude and determination. Patricia smiled in a way that suggested she was seeing the world through new eyes. "So welcome to Montgomery Design Studios," I continued, spreading my arms to encompass the entire room. "Welcome to your real job." The room went quiet, and my heart, loud with victory. But this was not the victory I had imagined during those dark nights in my tiny apartment. This was not the sweet revenge I had fantasized about when their cruel words had kept me awake with anger and determination. This was something better. This was the victory of transformation. Not just my own, but the transformation of everyone who had chosen to see beyond their initial judgments and join something larger than themselves. The months that followed were a whirlwind of growth and success that exceeded even my most ambitious projections. Margaret proved to be exceptionally talented at client relations. Her natural authority and attention to detail, the same qualities that had made her such an effective critic, made her brilliant at managing demanding corporate clients. She developed systems for maintaining long-term relationships that resulted in repeat business worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sandra's project management skills were extraordinary. She created timelines that kept our artists productive while ensuring client satisfaction, managed budgets that maximized profitability while maintaining artistic integrity, and coordinated logistics for multi-location projects that would have been impossible to handle without her expertise. Patricia's marketing strategies transformed our company's visibility. She understood how to tell our story in ways that resonated with potential clients, how to showcase our work through digital platforms that reached national audiences, and how to position our services as premium offerings rather than simple decorative solutions. But the real surprise was how the entire team began to gel. Former critics working alongside original believers, all united by a shared commitment to excellence and a growing understanding of what we were building together. Our reputation spread beyond anything I had imagined possible. Architectural firms began recommending us to their clients. Interior designers included our services in their project proposals. Real estate developers started budgeting for our artwork as standard components of their high-end properties. We were featured in design magazines, business publications, and artistic journals. The small-town girl who had been told to get a real job was now being interviewed about entrepreneurship, creativity, and the intersection of art and commerce. But the moment that truly validated everything came during our second annual company retreat. We had rented a conference center in the mountains, a place where we could spend 3 days planning our future while celebrating how far we had come. On the final evening, we gathered around a fire pit, sharing stories and reflecting on our journey. Margaret stood up, her voice slightly shaky with emotion. "I need to say something," she began, looking directly at me. "2 years ago, I thought I was protecting you from disappointment when I criticized your career choice. I thought I was being practical, realistic, helpful." She paused, gathering her courage. What I was really being was small-minded and afraid. I was projecting my own limitations onto your limitless potential. I was trying to make you as small as I felt, rather than recognizing that your dreams were bigger than anything I had ever dared to imagine for myself. The crackling fire was the only sound as she continued. "Working for you, working with you, has taught me that real jobs are not about security or conventionality. Real jobs are about using your talents to create value, to solve problems, to make the world more beautiful and meaningful." She looked around at our entire team. "This is the most real job I have ever had. And Lila, you are the most real leader I have ever worked for. Thank you for seeing potential in me that I could not see in myself." One by one, others shared similar reflections. Sandra talked about learning that leadership meant empowering others to exceed their own expectations. Patricia spoke about discovering that true marketing meant telling authentic stories, rather than manufacturing false promises. Tom Bradley, who had become our financial analyst, admitted that working with artists had taught him that numbers were just one way of measuring value, and that the most important metrics were often the ones that could not be quantified. Linda Foster, now our administrative coordinator, said that she had learned the difference between supporting someone's dreams and enabling their delusions, and that she had been wrong about which category my artistic ambitions belonged to. But it was Phoenix who captured the essence of what we had all discovered. "What we have built here is not just a business," they said, their voice carrying the passion that had attracted me to hire them in the first place. "We have created a proof of concept. We have proven that talent plus determination plus supportive community can overcome any obstacle, exceed any expectation, and transform any dream into reality." As I listened to my team, my family, sharing their insights and experiences, I realized that my journey had come full circle in the most unexpected way. I had started as a young woman with a paintbrush and a dream, facing criticism from people who saw only limitations. I had endured their doubt, absorbed their negativity, and channeled their skepticism into fuel for my determination. But somewhere along the way, the story had stopped being about proving them wrong and started being about proving what was possible. Montgomery Design Studios now employed 47 people across 3 locations. Our annual revenue had reached $8 million. We had completed over 200 major projects, touched millions of lives through our artwork, and established ourselves as leaders in the commercial art industry. More importantly, we had created jobs for people who needed them, opportunities for artists who deserved them, and beautiful spaces that enhanced the human experience. The small town of Millfield Creek had watched our growth with a mixture of pride and amazement. The same streets where I had once faced criticism now featured a bronze plaque commemorating our company's founding. The mayor had declared an annual Arts and Entrepreneurship Day, celebrating creative businesses and the economic impact of artistic industries. But the greatest satisfaction came from the letters we received from young artists who had heard our story and found the courage to pursue their own creative careers. "Your journey gave me permission to dream bigger," wrote one recent art school graduate. "When people tell me to get a real job, I think about your story and keep painting," shared another. "You proved that success is not about choosing between passion and profit. It is about finding ways to make them support each other," wrote a business student who was planning to start her own creative enterprise. These messages reminded me why our success mattered beyond personal validation or financial achievement. We had become living proof that alternative paths could lead to extraordinary destinations. 5 years after Margaret Hendricks had told me I would never make it past doodles on walls, I stood in our main gallery space, surrounded by examples of our work from around the country. Large photographs showcase murals that had transformed corporate lobbies into inspiring environments, hospital corridors into healing sanctuaries, and restaurant interiors into memorable experiences. Margaret walked up beside me, now our director of client relations, carrying a tablet filled with inquiries from potential new clients. "Lila," she said softly, "I owe you an apology that goes deeper than anything I said at the retreat." I turned to face her, curious about what had prompted this moment of reflection. "I spent so many years believing that dreams were dangerous because mine had been crushed so early," she continued. "When I saw you pursuing yours with such determination, it reminded me of everything I had given up on. Instead of celebrating your courage, I tried to convince you to give up too." She looked around at the gallery walls, taking in the evidence of everything we had accomplished. "You did not just prove me wrong about your potential. You proved me wrong about what was possible. And more than that, you gave me the chance to be part of something I never could have imagined." I placed my hand on her shoulder, feeling the sincerity in her words. "Margaret, you helped make this possible in ways you do not even realize. Your criticism forced me to develop thicker skin, to articulate my vision more clearly, to fight harder for what I believed in. And your skills as our client relations director have been essential to our growth." She smiled, but there was still something unfinished in her expression. "There is something else," she said. "My granddaughter is 8 years old, and she loves to draw. Her parents have been telling her that art is just a hobby, that she needs to focus on more practical subjects." Margaret paused, choosing her words carefully. "I have been telling them about our company, about what you have built, about how wrong I was to discourage artistic dreams. And I was wondering, would you be willing to talk to her? To show her that creativity can be a career, not just a pastime." The request hit me with unexpected emotion. This woman who had once crushed my artistic aspirations was now asking me to nurture her granddaughter's creative potential. "I would be honored," I said, meaning every word. 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting in our studio with 8-year-old Emma Hendricks, watching her eyes widen as she took in the canvases, the brushes, the palettes of color that surrounded us. "My grandma says you make pictures for a living," Emma said, her voice filled with wonder. "I do," I confirmed. "And I have a whole team of people who help me create artwork that makes buildings more beautiful and interesting." Emma picked up a paintbrush, holding it like it was made of precious metal. "People told my grandma that making pictures was not a real job," she said matter-of-factly. "But she says they were wrong." I knelt down beside her, thinking about all the circles that life had drawn around my journey. "Emma," I said gently, "there are people who will tell you that following your dreams is impractical or unrealistic. They might say these things because they are scared, or because they do not understand, or because they gave up on their own dreams and forgot how important dreams can be. Emma nodded solemnly, absorbing my words with the intensity that only children can bring to important conversations. But here is what I want you to remember. I continued. The people who tell you something is impossible are usually just telling you about their own limitations, not yours. And sometimes, if you prove them wrong with enough kindness and determination, they might even end up helping you succeed. Emma smiled, an expression that reminded me powerfully of my younger self. Can I paint something now? She asked. Of course, I said, setting up a small canvas and helping her select colors. What do you want to create? Something that shows dreams coming true, she said without hesitation. As I watched Emma begin to paint, mixing colors with the fearless experimentation that only comes from a heart that has not yet learned to doubt itself, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. I had started as a young woman fighting for recognition, desperate to prove that art could be more than a hobby. I had endured criticism, overcome obstacles, and built something extraordinary from nothing more than talent and determination. But the real victory was not the business success, the financial achievement, or even the satisfaction of proving doubters wrong. The real victory was this moment. Sitting beside a little girl who dreamed in colors, knowing that she would grow up in a world where those dreams were not just possible, but celebrated. The real victory was the team I had built, filled with people who had learned to see beyond their initial limitations and contribute to something larger than themselves. The real victory was the proof we had created together that passion and profit, creativity and commerce, dreams and determination could combine to build something beautiful and sustainable and meaningful. That evening, after Emma had finished her painting, a swirling, joyful explosion of color that she titled, "When Dreams Dance," I walked through our studio one more time before heading home. The space hummed with creative energy even when empty. Canvases in various stages of completion lined the walls. Digital design stations glowed with the soft light of screensavers. Storage areas held supplies for projects that would bring beauty to spaces across the country. But more than the physical evidence of our success, I felt the presence of all the dreams that had found their home here. Not just my own dream of building an artistic career, but the dreams of every team member who had discovered new possibilities for their talents. Every client who had dared to envision something extraordinary for their space. Every young artist who had found courage in our story. I thought about Margaret's words from earlier that day, about her granddaughter's bright future, about the circles of influence that ripple outward from every act of courage and creativity. And I realized that the best revenge against those who had doubted me was not their employment in my company, not their acknowledgement of their mistakes, not even their transformation from critics to supporters. The best revenge was this. I had become living proof that they were wrong about what was possible. But more than revenge, we had created something that transcended the original conflict entirely. We had built a community of dreamers and doers, a space where creativity flourished alongside commerce. A business that measured success not just in dollars but in the beauty we brought to the world and the opportunities we created for others. As I locked up the studio and headed toward my car, I passed the spot where Margaret Hendricks had first told me to get a real job. The memory no longer stung. Instead, it felt like the first chapter of a story that had grown far beyond anything any of us could have imagined. Tomorrow there would be new projects to start, new clients to inspire, new artists to hire, new possibilities to explore. There would be challenges to overcome, obstacles to navigate, dreams to nurture and protect. But tonight, I drove home with my heart loud with victory. Not the bitter triumph of proving enemies wrong, but the sweet satisfaction of proving that dreams, when pursued with enough passion and perseverance, can exceed even the wildest expectations. And in my rearview mirror, the lights of Montgomery Design Studios glowed like a beacon, illuminating the path for every dreamer brave enough to believe that their vision of the world could become reality. They told me to get a real job. So I created real jobs for 47 people, including many of the ones who had doubted me. They said art does not pay the bills. So I built a business that pays everyone's bills generously while creating beauty that enriches countless lives. They claimed I would never make it past doodles on walls. So I covered walls across the country with artwork that transforms ordinary spaces into extraordinary experiences. The laughter of doubt had been replaced by the symphony of success. And the most beautiful note in that symphony was not my own achievement, but the harmony created by everyone who had learned to dream bigger, reach higher, and believe in possibilities they had never imagined before. This is what happens when you refuse to let other people's limitations define your potential. This is what becomes possible when you turn criticism into fuel, doubt into determination, and obstacles into stepping stones towards something magnificent. My name is Lila Montgomery, and I built an empire from paint and perseverance, proving that the only real job worth having is the one that sets your soul on fire and lights the way for others to follow. If this story inspired you to chase your own impossible dreams, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of triumph, transformation, and the courage to prove that anything is possible when you refuse to give up on yourself.